In my opinion, learning from conversations is way more useful and frankly more fun than simply reading about them in a textbook. Say, for example, you want to prepare for a job interview in English. You could look up phrases to use in a job interview, memorize 10 of them, and then sound like a robot trying to fit expressions in places where they don't belong. Instead, you could dig into the details of a conversation to see exactly how they're used. I'm going to help you do that right now. First, we'll listen to a dialogue. Next, we'll analyze it. And finally, you'll practice by putting what you learned to use. Here we go. Hey, you must be Jeff, right? That's right. Great to meet you. Likewise. So you're interviewing for the new senior analyst position, correct? Correct. Perfect. So I see here that you have some experience in this line of work. I do. In fact, my first job out of college was working as a junior analyst for eCorp. I spent about 3 years there implementing a new order processing system that helped cut costs by about 20%. That's great. What were your specific job responsibilities? Basically, it boils down to 3 things. 1, conducting stakeholder interviews. 2, drafting implementation plans. And 3, getting buy-in from the steering committee. Wow, that's pretty impressive. All of that as a junior analyst? Let's just say that it was a company where you had to get used to wearing multiple hats. I know what you mean. All right, we're done with listening. That was just a 1-minute conversation, and there's a ton you can learn from it. Right away in the first sentence, we have a useful expression. Do you remember what it was? You must be. You must be plus a name or an adjective is a great way of making a guess that you're pretty confident in. It basically means the same thing as, I am pretty sure you are something. For example, how would you use it if you were expecting to meet a person named Lori and you see that person who you think is Lori? You must be Lori. How would you use it if he said something ridiculous and you think he is crazy for saying it? He must be crazy. Finally, what if they have not eaten anything for hours? What do you think they probably are? They must be starving. Next up, do you remember how our interviewer responded to the greeting, "Great to meet you"? Likewise. Likewise is a useful little expression if you want to say nice to meet you or have a great day right after someone just said it to you so that you don't have to repeat it. The last thing from this part of the conversation that I'll highlight is this senior analyst thing. When we're referring to different jobs or positions, which refers to a type of job in a company, junior is typically used to describe a version of the position for people with very little experience. Perhaps they just graduated and this is their first job out of college. On the other hand, senior is what we use to refer to a version of the position for people who have a lot more experience, maybe 3 to 5 years or more depending on the role. Finally, analyst is just a generic term that could refer to any number of jobs where someone is directly working with some sort of data. You could be a financial analyst, a business analyst, a handwriting analyst, etc. Next, do you recall what expression was used here? I see here that you have some experience in this line of work. People often refer to their specific profession or field as a line of work. It's what they do regularly to earn money. Out of these 3 sentences, how many do you think use it the right way? 2 of them. In the second and third example, you could replace line of work with profession, and they would still make sense. In the first sentence, however, you wouldn't typically ask how someone's entire profession is going. You'd typically ask them how their specific job is going. Next, how would you complete this expression? I spent about 3 years there. To spend time means to use a quantity of time working on a project or the quantity of time you were in a certain place. You can say, I spent years researching a vaccine because years is a quantity of time. What about this sentence? does it use spend time correctly? No, you can't say I spent more than one time watching the video. The difference here is that spend time works with quantities of time, like minutes, hours, weeks, etc. It doesn't work with occasions. For example, once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. To fix this sentence, you'd either have to avoid using spend time or replace more than one time with an actual quantity. I spent an hour watching the video. One more example. You can say, I visited New York once, which means you went there one time. We don't know for how long, and maybe it doesn't matter in the story you want to tell. On the other hand, how does the sentence change if you do want people to know that you were there for a week? I spent a week in New York once. Now we know you have been there one time and that you were there for a full week. Returning to our dialogue, implementing is just a fancy business suit way of saying to make something work. We usually use it in business to talk about new ideas, plans, laws, or software. You can say, we will implement a new strategy because strategy is a type of plan. You can't say, I couldn't implement the right verb tenses while speaking, because verb tenses aren't an idea, plan, law, or software. They're a specific part of grammar. Instead of implement, it'd be better to say something like, I couldn't remember the verb tenses, or I didn't use the right verb tenses. Closing out this section of our dialogue, we have the expression cut costs. This is again some fancy business jargon that means to spend less money. Instead of saying the new app will help us spend less money, you could just say the new app will help us cut costs. Another common expression both in and out of the office is it boils down to. It's a great way to summarize something or simplify a larger issue. For example, why did Katie stop talking to us? I think it boils down to her new job. Or how can I live a happy life? It all boils down to your relationships. Now, you might have noticed that the 3 things that followed it boils down to are ing verbs. It wouldn't make sense to say it boils down to conduct interviews or it boils down to draft plans, because normally when you put a verb after a preposition like to, the verb needs to be an ing verb. It's not I'm thinking about change careers, it's I'm thinking about changing careers. It's not I am not consistent with speak English, it's I am not consistent with speaking English. Returning to the sentence from our dialogue, it boils down to ends with the preposition to. So if we're going to add a verb after it, it should be an ing verb. It boils down to conducting interviews. Closing out this section, stakeholder, buy-in, and steering committee are just more fancy business words. A stakeholder is someone in a company who cares about something. For example, if you own an application at work, then you probably care if someone changes it. You are a stakeholder of that application. Buy-in is the business way of saying an agreement or a willingness to do something, and it can be used both as a noun or a verb. Finally, a steering committee is just a group of senior leaders in a company that make decisions about a project. Think people like CEOs, directors, etc. Let's try to use these in a couple sentences. Which 2 would you use here? Check with all the stakeholders to see if we have their buy-in to change their site. Here, buy-in is being used as a noun. It's basically the same thing as saying, check if we have their agreement to change their website. Try this one. I'm not sure the steering committee has bought in to the new strategy. Here, buy-in is being used as a verb. We are asking to see if the steering committee has already, note in the past, bought into the strategy. All right, we made it to the last section. In the first sentence, you see we started with the expression all of that in a question. It's a good way to show that you're surprised at how much someone did or how much of something there is. You might say, you did all of that by yourself, if you're surprised that someone did a lot of work without any help, Or you can get all of that for just $10 if you're surprised by all the food you can get for $10 at a restaurant. Next, the expression let's just say is a common way of keeping something simple when you don't want to give too many details. If someone asked you, how was the interview? You might be thinking it was terrible, I was nervous, I said the wrong things. But rather than having to tell all those details and relive the experience, you might say, let's just say I didn't get the job. Next, wear multiple hats is just a common business expression to say that you have a lot of jobs or roles at work. For example, at my job, everyone wears multiple hats. One day you're designing a website, and the next you're mopping the floor. Finishing up our conversation, we see the expression, I know what you mean. This is a good way to tell someone that you understand them because you have experienced the same thing. It's usually used with negative experiences or things you don't like. If someone said, man, I hate paying taxes, you could say, I know what you mean, if you pay them too. However, if you're a man and a woman says, being pregnant is difficult, you probably can't say, I know what you mean, because there's no way that you could have experienced the same thing. All right, we've seen a whole bunch of new expressions. Time to practice using a few of them. How would you complete this sentence? My life boils down to eating and sleeping. We use the ing versions of these verbs here because they come after the preposition to. How would you respond to this question without having to explain everything you are thinking? Let's just say it wasn't my favorite. Is this sentence correct? No, it isn't. Spend time works with quantities of time. We'd either have to change the expression, such as, I read the instructions 3 times, or use a quantity of time. I spent an hour reading the instructions. How would you respond in this conversation if you were surprised by how much your friend did in one day? All of that in one day? Do you remember the fancy business words that could be used in this sentence? Do we have your buy-in to hire a new junior analyst? Last one. How would you respond to let your friend know that you understand how they feel? I really hate pandemics. I know what you mean. Great job. We saw a lot of interesting expressions in that 1-minute conversation. Your job now is to look at all of these and ask yourself, do I think I might use any of these in a conversation tomorrow, either at work or at the bar? If the answer is yes to some of them, add those to your collection. For the ones where the answer is no, you can simply leave them alone for now. Not sure what I mean by collection? Check out my video on how to improve your vocabulary to learn more. If you'd like to get more of this type of content and start receiving advice from me directly, head over to deliberateenglish.com to register. You'll also get a free gift that will help you start improving your English right away. See you soon.